The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com. Welcome to another live episode of Wrestling with Johners, episode 209, and a fantastic guest today. I'm joined by none other than the current FullForce Wrestling champion, Harry Singh. Harry, how you doing? Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, mate. Pleasure to be here.
No, the pleasure is all mine. But as you told your followers on Instagram yesterday, Harry, you've had a very, very busy 3 or 4 days. You've performed in several shows. You've had a seminar. Tell us about your kind of last 3 or 4 days, because it's mind blowing how busy you've been recently. Then, Harry,
I guess it kind of is mind blowing to some degree, but now I think most wrestlers and myself as well included with that is just it's just another day in the office type of thing. Like you try to keep as busy as possible, try and get as many in-ring reps as you can. And that's what this weekend really was. But the fun part was I got to do a seminar with Jonathan Gresham. And that's quite rare, especially now after the pandemic. It's hard to get US imports over to teach you different things and different perspectives and things like that. So overall, the weekend was really fun. I love being busy, but then then Monday hits again, and you're like, okay, off to another week.
Absolutely, and kind of culminating it all here on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. So thank you very much for joining me. And I just want to encourage anybody watching at home, anybody kind of watching this live stream on our Facebook live pages, on YouTube or Twitch. If you want to get in touch with Harry, send us a question, send us any comments. You can do. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions live on air. Of course, enter your questions in your device, and it will ping through to us, and we'll do our best to answer them live on air. But Harry, your current FullForce Wrestling champion, so congratulations on that. I mean, 2021, although wrestling has only reopened its doors for the last couple, maybe 3 months, you've had a busy 2021 already, haven't you? I mean, you've appeared on Progress Wrestling twice, which of course is on the WWE Network, and we'll talk about that very, very soon. You've made your Wrestle Carnival debut, and now you're the FullForce Wrestling. I don't know if it's a unified champion, but because you're the Commonwealth champion as well as the FFW champion. So let's talk about FFW to start off with, and being their kind of champion, because you beat TJ Sky, didn't you, not too long ago in a title versus title match. Tell us about that unification match, because you're the double champ now over in FFW. So a hell of an accomplishment. But how do you feel?
Honestly, it meant a lot to me that I was trusted with being the main. I guess the main guy. And the thing was, FullForce gave me an opportunity when no one else really saw anything in me. So to me now, it's one of the places that feels like home, and I would only say that about one of maybe 2 places altogether, and that's one of those places. So to be able to be their champion was a really big deal to me, and it's a huge responsibility as well, because now the way I consider being a champion is it's your job to have the match of the night. Of course, you're always striving for that as a wrestler anyway, but now it's an obligation more than anything else. Like if you're coming to a show, it's my duty to give you the 150% of me, you know, and the championship is what that represents, you know. If it's around my waist, then you're going to get my promise that I'm going to give everything I've got. If it's 50 fans or if it's 500 fans, you know, I'm going to give everything I got.
Absolutely. And tell us a bit about the match as well for those that haven't seen it, because I mean, the champion, he was the champion for 2 years, wasn't he? I know we have the pandemic in the middle of there as well, but it was a champion versus champion match, not a title unification, I'm sure. But tell us about the match, and tell us about the outcome, and kind of, your feelings kind of coming out of that match.
It was really fun to go in, because I've actually never wrestled TJ Sky one-on-one. So, and I think we did a little bit when
surprising, because you've both got a long history with FFW, haven't you? So
yeah, we've ran in very similar promotions before as well, but we've never wrestled one-on-one, so that was the first time. And it was really fun to work with him, actually. One of those guys who I just think little tweaks here and there, and he could be wherever he wants to be, you know. Again, that takes tweaks, but that's with all wrestlers. Same with me as well. But coming out of that match at the end, it was something I was proud of. Again, I watch all my matches back and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't do this. I wish I did this. Oh, I should have done this. But as far as it went, I was proud of what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's quite interesting to hear that you watch your matches back, because I've spoken to some wrestlers and they don't like to watch their matches back. But I mean, I've got to be honest, as a podcaster, I listen to my shows back as a learning experience, as a learning curve, to see what I've done well or not so well. And I'm sure you do the same with your wrestling matches, to see what you can tweak and maybe change and improve going forward then.
That's exactly what it is. To be honest, I don't enjoy listening to myself back. I also don't enjoy watching myself back. With me, I'll try and watch it with like a coach or someone more experienced than me, so I can get their criticism as well. I'll watch it back myself just to see what criticism I give myself. And I've found that I'm my own worst enemy in that sense anyway, because I'll rip my match to shreds. I'm like, why am I still wrestling? This is awful. But listening back with like a coach and things like that, you get a different kind of feedback. You get a different perspective. But that's really what it's for. I find it hard to watch myself back as a fan. I don't think many wrestlers can, to be honest. But being able to watch it just to critique myself and things like that, that's really the main aim as to why I watch my matches back.
Yeah, absolutely. Harry, I want to take a deep dive into your career, and I want to take a deep dive into your wrestling fandom, because I find your wrestling fandom really, really fascinating. But I've got to throw a quick plug to our sponsors, 1310 Apparel, who sponsor the Johners Podcasting Network and this very podcast, Wrestling with Johners. They've got an awesome range of products, from their hardcore line to their lucha line, to their traditional 1310 apparel range. And they sponsor some of the most talented wrestlers on the UK scene at the moment, like Heidi Katrina, Chris Ridgway, Northwest Strong, and so many others. And now they sponsor the Wrestling with Johners podcast. But you could take advantage of our agreement, of our deal with 1310 Apparel, and just go to their global store at Wrestle Merch Central. You can click in a link to the description of the podcast, whether you're listening to this on the audio form, on YouTube, or even during the live feed. There should be a link in the description. Or just go to 1310.merch.global and use the discount code 1310WMC to get 10% off at checkout. But please support our sponsors, 1310 Apparel, one of the leading wrestling-inspired apparel company in the UK. And they are absolutely fantastic guys. But Harry, is back to us, and I want to talk a bit more about FFW, FullForce Wrestling, because, as I said, you've not spent your whole career with them, but certainly the last 3 years, I'd say from 2018, you started working with them. How did that journey with yourself and FullForce Wrestling start? And give us a bit of a run through of your experience with them.
So I'm not sure if this is common knowledge, actually, but me and the promoter is Joey Scott. His wrestling name is Joey Scott. Me and him have gone way back. We started at the same training school together. And we both, I don't know what the politically correct way to say this is. But effectively, we both got fired from that training school, right? And roughly around the same time, I think there was months in between. And after that, I kind of branched out and did my own thing. He branched out and did his own thing. I saw that he started a promotion. And at that time, like years later, I started branching out and trying to get different bookings from different places, you know. And he was one of those people I messaged. And I messaged him just to say, look, if there's anything available. I didn't expect anything. Like, I knew him, but we weren't close. I messaged him just to say, if there's anything available, just let me know. And I think it was his first year anniversary show. He dropped me a message back and he said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Absolutely, yeah, I'm ready to go." And from then on, we got along really well. And then it was just one show after another, really. I wanted to do my best, and I think he saw that, and I think he appreciated that I was ready to give everything I got just to make sure that I had my place there, you know. But yeah, it's really cool to work there.
Absolutely. And we spoke a bit off air, and I think one of your standout matches, I think not just for FFW, but possibly your career so far, is your match against the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne. Now, this would have been fairly early on in your run with FFW, 2018, I've got it down as, while he was the NXT UK champion. I said to you earlier, I watched it back today, and Harry, man, that match just blew me away all over again. It just absolutely, it was just intense, hard hitting, impactful. You know, the forearm shots that he was throwing your way and the comebacks that you had to make. Give us your thoughts. First of all, how did that match come about? When did you first find out that you were going to be facing Pete Dunne?
It was crazy. I found out from the promoter. He messaged me and he just said, "Guess who I booked?" I'm like, "Who?" And he just said, "Pete Dunne." I was like, "Oh, crazy! That's going to be a great show." And then he sent the match graphic of me versus him after. I was like, "Oh, okay then." So it's time for me to get
this
that
match graphic there.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, this is going to be crazy." So I was really excited more than anything else because I don't think this is kind of common knowledge, but Pete has mentored me, I would say. He's helped me like a lot in so many ways. So we met in Portugal, of all places. Like, I'm from a place like Tyler Bates from there, Dudley, and he's from Birmingham, and they're no more than like 20 minutes away from each
West
other.
Midland boys,
exactly, right? And the first place we meet is Lisbon, so it's a little bit mad like that. But because we were the only two fluent English speakers there, we kind of gravitated towards each other like that and started speaking. And then after that, he's always been so kind to me, and he's always been very helpful. He's helped me out so much in like my career and how I've wrestled. I could go endlessly about how much he's done for me.
And tell us about that match, because like I say, it was intense. He threw everything at you, didn't he? But you know, you kicked out of his finishers and some of his signature moves, and you came back. And I think by the end of it, well, I don't think, I know that the respect level he had for you kind of went through the roof because of, you know, the match you had with him. And like I say, considering how highly regarded he is in UK wrestling and being signed to WWE, the NXT UK champion at the time, probably one of the best wrestlers in Europe, possibly the world. But tell us about the match, because you went through the ringer, didn't you? It's a tough match.
Yeah, it was crazy. I wouldn't say I was 100% after the match. I was definitely sore for a matter of days after, but that match meant a lot to me because Pete saw me work before and he knew I could handle myself at the very least. So being able to wrestle him and show that I can go, you know, and I by the end of the match he knew that, but it was just one of those things where it's one of those moments I don't think I'll ever forget, because that was a really special moment for me to be able to, because the thing was, I was a fan of Pete before I met him, like just as a wrestler. I had no affiliation with him whatsoever. And then becoming acquaintances with him, getting to know him a little bit more, and then being able to wrestle him, it all just peaked really nicely. And he went to Florida not like a few months after that, and I never thought that I'd get that chance, you know. So it's a credit to FullForce. It's a credit to him for accepting it. It was just one of those things I'll never forget, really. It was great.
Now, what you need to focus on now is kind of getting signed and having that rematch in an NXT.
That's the goal.
That would be pretty good, wouldn't it? That would be amazing. But moving away from FFW for a little bit, and I want to kind of take you back to January the 1st, 2020, because I don't know if you remember, but you put out a post and it had a series of goals on it. Now, of course, 2020 happens and a lot of them goals kind of blew out the window because of what happened with the pandemic. But do you remember what them goals were, Harry?
So that was for last year, right? So all the goals that I wanted in 2020. Yeah, I think I do. So it was there was some wrestling ones which was wrestle a certain amount of times, go to training a certain amount of times, but obviously that wasn't possible because of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
But everything else was, I think, was getting a shape that I was happy with, and it was read 6 new books. I think it was. I'm not sure if there was anything else. I think that was the main ones. Yeah.
And the reason why I brought this up is probably one of your biggest accomplishments from that list was of course, as you said, getting into better physical shape. And I think that consequently, what that's done for you post-pandemic has really had a fantastic positive knock-on effect with your wrestling career into 2021. But tell us about, obviously the pandemic, it was an enforced layoff for all the professional wrestlers, certainly in the UK, but it gave you an opportunity to focus on, I suppose, your kind of your mental well-being and your physical well-being. You got yourself into a better condition, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was the year I really. So 2020 and the COVID pandemic was very taxing on all of us in terms of mentally, physically, so many ways. And I think that I didn't really enjoy home workouts, but I knew I had to do something. And that's when I really started to appreciate how much physical well-being correlates with mental well-being as well. So I knew the more active I was, the more I was pushing myself, the better I would be mentally as well. And now I'll never ever take physical health for granted. And now I'm in a shape that I'm happy with, but it did take the pandemic to get that way, because a lot of wrestlers had that, where the thing is, you're wrestling every weekend. You're sore for days after. It's very hard on top of that to keep track of your diet, to go gym regularly. And it was a credit to people that already did that before the pandemic, but it took the pandemic for me to get in shape and now to maintain it. Because I had so much time off. So I was able to gym so regularly. It was a shame the gyms were closed, but I was able to do home workouts, and I was working out 3-4 times a week. And I started to really learn about nutrition, exercise principles and things like that. And it all just kind of fell into place that way.
Absolutely. And you've been able to continue that routine and that regime, even though kind of work life and wrestling balance is all back to normal?
Yeah, so it's difficult to some degree, because obviously I'm a lot more busy now. But the thing is, I try and plan my weeks every Sunday. I try and plan out what I'm going to do and what I need to prioritize, whether that's some social aspects where I need to go and see people, gym for sure, wrestling training, wrestling shows. Obviously, I've got my day job on top of that. So there's just so many layers that I need to kind of plan out. But I tend to find, as long as you plan it out and work out which days you're going to go, it's much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of my point to all of this is that it did allow you to get into better physical and mental shape, and it obviously getting you noticed, and it led to Progress Wrestling. And like I say, although the UK wrestling doors have only been open the last 2 or 3 months, you've had 2 appearances for Progress Wrestling. And I know when we met backstage at Wrestle Carnival in August, you said that that was kind of one of your kind of dream things ticked off, one of your kind of bucket list things accomplished. But when did you first get approached to kind of wrestle for Progress? Because that's another great accomplishment that 2021 has given you so far.
It was huge for me. A lot of people may discredit it, like it's not what it used to be or whatever it is. The people slate things all the time, but to me that was a personal goal, and no one can take that away from me, type of thing. Like it was something which I wanted to achieve as soon as Progress started to get big, and I was like, okay, so this is now the top promotion. So now I've got to get there. If I want to wrestle at the level I want to be at, I need to, in order to be considered, I need to be on this level, and I need to be on these kind of shows, So being able to get there was finally like, wow, I did it, Like it was a big milestone for me, but there's so much more to achieve, and that was one of those things that I was able to sit back and be like, that was cool. That was a really cool thing to do. But I got approached. So they were running a lot of shows in Peckham, because they struck a deal with the theatre, and they were able to run shows there, like tapings for 4 or 5 days. And then and then it would be months, and then they'd film the next set of tapings. And I went there to help, just to like help, because there's so much that goes into it. I didn't know how much went into it until I was there helping. There is so many people that don't get credit for how much work goes into the production, goes into the work backstage, goes into the work in the matches. There's just so much. And I was a part of like the ring crew, the production team, things like that. And I guess I made a good impression to some degree, and they invited me back for the next tapings to wrestle. So when I was able to do that, I jumped at the chance and never really looked back. So it was great. It was so good.
And I'm kind of guessing that probably would have been your return to the ring post-pandemic then, although, like I say, it didn't air until August. It's probably taped a few weeks earlier, maybe a couple of months earlier, but that would have been your first match.
It was.
Against Spike Trevay.
This was the funny thing. When the pandemic was happening, if you told me your first match is going to be for Progress, I wouldn't have believed you for one, but I also would have had to change my underwear for sure, and then get in shape, get some as much training in as I can, and then get ready for it, you know. But thankfully, I did all those things, including change my underwear. So yeah.
And you've had a couple of matches. We'll just touch on them. But Spike Trevay, somebody I know that you've wrestled before, and Danny Black. I'm not sure if you've wrestled Danny Black before the Progress match, but tell us about the matches. Must have been a real kind of thrill to wrestle those two. You know, at a wrestling company you've got so much respect for.
Yeah, I mean, I would have wanted the one with Spike Trevay to go much better than it did, and that's purely due to him cheating and being an asshole. But yeah,
he's a heel.
I'd like to get my vengeance on him again in a Progress ring, hopefully later down the line. But Danny Black, I didn't know much about him. I first saw him at an Ambush show, and I obviously spoke to him at the tapings before I wrestled, then the tapings when I wrestled Spike Trevay, and then I was able to talk to him again after that. And he's such a talent. Like, it's crazy how good he is. And he's not been doing it crazy amounts of years. I would guess 3 or 4. And he was just one of those guys who's so easy to work with. And he got the win over me, so he's obviously very good.
Well, there you go. But I mean, 2 terrific matches. And are we likely to see you back in a Progress ring sometime soon? Don't need to give any spoilers away, but
time will tell. So as all I know is now there are no shows booked. But I hope when they do come back, my name will be on their lips. I hope so. I'm sure they will. And just one final point on that is of course you're a lifelong WWE fan, and we're going to kind of take a deep dive into your fandom very, very soon. But seeing your matches on the WWE Network, that can't be bad. That was an emotional moment for me. Regardless of how short the match with Spike was, it was just one of those things where I was able to prove to everybody that I can do this. You know, I got to it. For example, my mindset at that time was, if everything ended tomorrow, I have a match on the WWE Network, you know, so it's great. Like, it was an emotional moment for me. Absolutely. We're going to be kind of moving from subject matter to subject matter. Got our first listener question in, Harry, from the Free Counts, watching via YouTube at the moment. Ask Harry what match type he wants to do that he hasn't wrestled yet. Great question. That is a very good question. One that springs to mind instantly is a steel cage match. I've never done it, and I really would love to do one. Hopefully soon for somewhere. But yeah, just I've been on a lot of shows with a steel cage on, never been in a match with one, so I'd love to do it. It's got to happen. Now you've put it out there in the universe. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I want to ask you about your wrestling fandom then. And first and foremost, kind of how did pro wrestling first come into your life as a fan then? What was that kind of moment that effectively changed your world forever? So the funny thing was, I didn't think many people got into it the same way I did. Maybe they did. I've not had a similar story. But basically, I was quite young at the time. I must have only been about 4 or 5. And my cousins came round with the game. It was SmackDown Just Bring It. And
right.
or it was SmackDown 2000. I can't really remember. But I remember Just Bring It vividly. And we used to play it like whenever they used to come around for days on end. And I was obsessed with like Kane and The Undertaker. And I think that was purely because of how big they were and how different they were as well. And on top of that, I remember the chokeslam was like my favorite move because I was like, you hit that in the game. And I was like, they're not getting up. That's it. That was great. So and that correlation of then watching it then, and then I don't remember the first time I watched it on TV, to be honest. But I remember Kane and The Undertaker being my favorite wrestlers. And I think that was probably just due to the chokeslam, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you what wrestlers, gravitated towards you when you were younger. You've mentioned a couple there. Any others? I mean, as you kind of grew older as a wrestling fan, you're more of a mature wrestling fan. Sure. Did you gravitate towards any other wrestlers in particular, maybe for their styles or their looks or their persona?
Yeah, definitely. So Kane and The Undertaker was probably my first 2 people that really struck me. And then there was more like Jeff Hardy was more when I was like a fan because his kind of peak to the WWE Championship, I was still like a major fan at that point. And that was like massive for me. And on top of that, he did a style that I loved as well. Like I think a lot of wrestlers my age will always say Jeff Hardy was the guy.
It comes up very often. It really
exactly.
Yeah.
So it was Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio as well. And as I got a bit older, like I started training at this point, but I wasn't really a wrestler. Like I was just training. It was like Daniel Bryan, Chris Benoit as well. There was a load of like wrestlers like that who were shorter. But they could wrestle really well. And I thought, okay, so this is possible then, because these guys are small, but and I'm only 5'9", but these guys are small, about my height. And for example, Daniel Bryan was in the main event of WrestleMania. So I was like, this dream is possible, because I always thought, like everyone else did, and which is the way it was booked at the time, was you have to be 6 foot plus ripped, like huge as well. And then when Daniel Bryan comes along, you're like, okay, like I can do this as well then,
Oh, 100%. Speaking of Daniel Bryan, I've got this picture to bring up. Now that's from 7.5 years ago, but 2014. Now we spoke a little bit off air, and I thought you'd just been to the one Mania, but you're correct to me, you've been to many Manias. So let's talk about it, because I mean, I think this photo and around this time really inspired you, didn't it? And Daniel Bryan in particular inspired you, and I don't know, I suppose lit the blue touch paper to the beginning of your wrestling career, I suppose.
I was already wrestling at this point, but the going back to the different Manias that I went to, it was WrestleMania 28 was the big one for me because that was my first one, but the main event was John Cena versus The Rock, and just during that, John Cena started to become like my favorite wrestler. This is before I started wrestling, but yeah, he was my favorite wrestler at the time. And then when The Rock came back, who doesn't know The Rock? Like you can mention it to anybody and everyone will know him. And that was major as well because I love The Rock. And that year-long build-up was like huge because then I think it was about January time I knew that I was going to go as well. So I was like, this is going to be the most insane thing ever. And then I went, had the like amazing WrestleMania experience that like it's impossible to explain. It's one of the best things ever. You've been, but like going to a city in America, and at that time it was Miami, so it's heat as well, so it was great. That was hot. There was really, really good wrestling going on, and I was getting to meet all my like heroes at the time. I met John Cena, I met Kofi Kingston, I met loads of wrestlers then. And then after that, after watching the shows, The Rock, Raw the next day, seeing Brock Lesnar come back, I just kind of said to my dad, I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm serious about this. I want to do this. I was only 15 at the time, and then, like most people, I just Googled training schools close to me and then began training, and I never really took no for an answer. And I was just ready to keep going with this, Absolutely. It was really good.
I want to take a deep dive into your training and your kind of early couple of years, but we've got a couple of quick questions that have come in via YouTube once again from Simpomania. I have a question. What was the first indie title that you held then, Harry?
Oh, Let me think. It would have been the PWL Midlands Championship, I think, or maybe the tag team. I think it was a tag team championships that I held first, and then it was the Midlands after that. So it was like a promotion in the Midlands, and I was like their tag team and Midlands champion.
Yeah. And that would have been fairly early on in your career, I'm guessing.
Very early, yeah, very early.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get take a deep dive into your wrestling career, I want a quick shout out to a friend of ours over here. And I can't get rid of that comment, but Immortal Wrestling, here we go again. They're making their comeback show on Saturday, the 20th November at the Venom nightclub in Westbury. Funnily enough, I live in Westbury, so I'm trying to get behind it, get as many people in there as possible. Really great lineup. Tiger Kid is their current champion. You've got so many awesome talents there, including Frankie T, Nightshade, Jody Fleisch, and so many more. So come on down to Immortal Wrestling. We go again Saturday, the 20th of November, and just go to Eventbrite, which is where they're selling their tickets. Come along, a perfect family occasion, perfect live wrestling for all the family. So go to Eventbrite to find out more and to get your tickets today. But Harry, I think you've wrestled once for Immortal, haven't you?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yep, really, really great promotion, up and coming promotion, and they got a lot of really, really top UK stars there. But let's touch upon your. You said you started training fairly early on. How young were you when you started training?
So I sent the email when I came back from WrestleMania, and that was like April, May time. I was 15, and then I didn't get an email back until November or something like that. So I don't even know what I did in that time. I didn't think that anything was going to happen. Didn't think anything was going to come of anything. So imagine if I didn't get that email back. So I got one back when I was about 16 in November, and then I started training from there. I was at a place in Great Bar for about 2 years. But yeah, starting training there, and it was crazy actually, because the first training session I went to, I didn't expect it to hurt the way it did. And it really does. Like, I was running the ropes and I was like, this is hurting me like a lot. And I was thinking, how do wrestlers run the ropes several times per match? Like, this is insane. And then taking the first bump as well, you're just seeing stars. It's like, it's insane. At that point, I did think, maybe this isn't for me, but I loved it. Yeah. I loved it. When I came back home, I was buzzing. Like, no matter how sore and beaten up I was like, this is cool. I can't wait to go back next week.
But you carried on going. And how soon before you had your first match then, Harry?
It wasn't until... So I did like a trainee match, which is like in front of like friends and family and stuff. I wouldn't really class that as a match though, I guess. I guess it was an experience in front of a live crowd, which was fun, which was about a year into my training, which some people can argue is quite long. I was watching it back now. It's hilarious to me to watch, because I was a fan of Brock Lesnar at the time, so I was Harry the MMA fighter judge.
Nice.
So yeah, it was I'm glad that wasn't on the internet, because I've got a private link to it, but it's, oh god, it's horrible.
You won't be sharing that link anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, no.
And take us back to them kind of maybe first year or two when you're finding your feet, learning the business. Any kind of memories back then? I mean, did you settle into the business quite well? Was you a natural? Did you kind of find wrestling quite natural in the end, or early on?
So the thing was, I was only 16 at the time, so I was very skinny. I was a skinny little kid, and I obviously knew wrestling and I knew moves, so you could say a move and I knew exactly what it was, but to be able to do it is a whole different matter completely. So I wouldn't say that I picked it up as naturally as some people do, but the thing was, my theory behind this is, when you're younger, you pick things up a lot quicker than most would, because you're in school at the time. I was in college at the time, so I was learning all the time. Or like my brain was a sponge, so being able to, like, I would see stuff in training, and I would be like, okay, let's try it. And some things I would get very easily, and some things I wouldn't. But then you do get the odd people who are very good at everything, and you get some people who need a little bit more work with things, you know. But I think I sat in like the middle.
Yeah. And going back through your kind of wrestling career, and kind of fairly early on, certainly within the first couple of years, you had some great matches against some of the international talent that were coming over. Juventud Guerrera, Ultimo Dragon, back in 2016 or so, 2015, 2016. So early on in your career, going up against amazing international talent like that, and must have been a thrill and also a fantastic learning experience as well.
Well, the thing was at the time, if I was to be completely honest with myself, I had a bit of an ego. So I was very much like, yeah, I deserve this. I deserve to have these imports. And I guess that was kind of my surroundings as well, because not everyone in that training school at the time was, I would argue, I just believed I was better than them at the time. So I believed that I should be getting these opportunities. Then I wrestled Juventud Guerrero and I realized, yeah, I'm not ready. Because I realized at that point, like, he's levels and levels, like crazy. Like, I don't even know if I've wrestled a better wrestler than him now, to be honest.
Really?
But he's so good. And I just wasn't ready for him at the time. I've spoke about this before in other podcasts, but he was just, he was calling things to me and I wasn't ready to call on the fly. That's how green I was, you know? And yeah, he was, he was really nice to me, and he gave me a lot of feedback after, and he never ever chewed me out or anything like that. But I think he and I both knew that I wasn't ready at the time. But again, a learning experience for sure.
A huge learning experience. And I think it was a tag match when you were involved with Ultimo Dragon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so learning from the Juventud Guerrero experience, I knew that I had to get better. So I completely dedicated myself to so much studying wrestling, like, because I would watch wrestling but I wouldn't study it, and there is a difference. So I was studying a lot more of Ultimo Dragon, and now he's one of my favorite wrestlers. He was one of my favorite wrestlers then, to be honest, because of how original he was. So getting that was a big deal. And then in the tag match, like, I knew that I had to step up, and I did to some degree. I'm a better wrestler now than I was then, but having it then, I learned a lot. And again, I got to wrestle him like 2 weekends in a row, so that was so much fun.
That's
it was
really
great.
Cool.
Yeah.
And another name that jumped out at me when I was doing my research was MJF. Now, I think he was involved in a 6-man match, and I think maybe Flip Gordon was on your team. MJF was on the opposition. Now, this would have been maybe a couple of years before AEW, a couple of years before he was more on a mainstream TV.
I'm surprised you found this, actually.
I'm sure he was still kind of the cocky, arrogant MJF that he is now, but just a bit younger. What was that like? Because he was obviously brought over as an import along with Flip Gordon. That must have been another interesting experience, knowing what you know now about the person, I suppose.
There's no denying MJF's great. Flip Gordon's also great as well. I got along much better with Flip than I did with MJF. There's no secret MJF is MJF, you know. So
he lives the gimmick, does he?
very, very much so. Yeah.
But like say, another interesting match that kind of jumped out at me. But I mean, what about some of your UK opponents? Some guys that you've kind of travelled up and down the road with and got in the ring with. Let's have a little bit of a shout out to some of your favourite UK opponents. Then, I mean, what sort of some of your favourite matches or UK opponents that you've had over the years? Then, Harry.
For sure, Pete Dunne, obviously.
I
can't begin that without him. Another name that jumps out to me who's super underrated in my opinion is Joey Scott. He's insanely good in my opinion. And I think he's another one of those guys. He can get to wherever he wants. Even at this stage, he's such a good wrestler. But again, some tweaks probably needed in terms of standing out as a character and things like that. But as far as a wrestler goes, you can't fault him. He's fantastic, one of the best. There's also others as well. A guy who works super hard, Tate Mayfair's. Never wrestled him, but he's just one of those guys who works so hard. He's that guy I've kind of set a bar on, because this is the bar here for Tate, and then I'm like here in terms of how hard he works. I'm like, if I'm not working as hard as him, I shouldn't be here. And that's my kind of mentality. I've never told him that, so he might be watching, and he may see this eventually. But yeah, he's that guy. I'm like, okay, I need to be working as hard as him if I want to get anywhere. So he's another one. Just trying to think of. I'm sure there's so many people I'm missing.
I'm sure you could go on all day long, but Joey Scott. I mean, you've wrestled Joey quite a few times, haven't you? But
so many times.
Any kind of final names that you think really deserve a bit of recognition that you've really had some great fun with?
As much as I hate him, Spike Trevay.
Yeah.
I think he's incredible as a performer. Charles Crowley, another great performer. Kanji, in my personal opinion, Kanji is the best, if not one of the best women's wrestlers in the UK. I'm just trying to think of others now as well. Darius is one of those guys who's just very entertaining as well.
Phenomenal athlete, yeah.
What a great very entertaining guy.
What a great guy.
I can keep going. I've just got it like there's so many names that pop up in my head, but those are the ones that like came to my mind.
Well, absolutely, you've wrestled so many top names across the UK, but I want to talk a bit about your in-ring style now, Harry, because I've seen quite a few of your matches. I've seen you up close and personal as well. From my opinion, you've got, like I say, a lot of pace, a lot of explosiveness to the way you work as well. Mm-hmm. You're very resilient in the ring, as we saw your match against Pete Dunne. But one thing that really impressed me, you could say, a combination of your pace and your explosiveness, but you're so smooth in the ring as well. And you kind of might not agree with me, but like I say, everything is just so precise and so smooth. Tell us about your in-ring style and how you've developed it over the years, and Harry.
It kind of takes time. Believe me, if you saw the matches, like some of the worst ones that I've had, you'd be like, this guy's awful. And I've had those kind of matches before, but it kind of takes time to develop the moveset that you want to have. And I don't consider myself a complete wrestler yet. I think I'm always learning, and I love that. I love that. Whatever it is I do, whether it's podcasting, wrestling, traveling, there's always more things to learn, and I love that about that, because with pro wrestling, it's an art form. You can't say I've 100% completed it, because there's always more to learn. There's always new things that you can do, and I love that so much. And I think from where I started to where I am now, I'm proud in that aspect, because I've learned this much to get this far, but I'm like, okay, now it's time to learn even more so I can get to the next level,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm intrigued. Where does that kind of pace and that explosiveness come from then? Because, like I say, you're not an out-and-out high flyer or anything like that. There's quite a few high spots, but you are very pacey around the ring. There is a kind of a lot of dynamic to you. But where does that come from? Is that a sporting background or just something you've developed?
So I used to do MMA, and the kind of thing that was purely because this was before I started wrestling, right? I just wanted to do something which is close to wrestling, and I was like, well, this is the closest thing, so I'm just going to do that. So I did MMA for a couple of years, but I think maybe subliminally that's played a part in how I wrestle now, because a lot of what I do is quite evasive. It's finding the right opportunities for the right things, and that played a part in MMA as well, because you can't rush in with MMA. You can't do certain things very quickly, because you will lose. Your opponent will catch you and you will lose. So that plays a part in wrestling as well. So it's like finding the right things to do at a certain time. So a lot of it, I'm just trying to be quick, trying to confuse the opponent, trying to do things like that, just trying to do things that they've not seen before, not only from a wrestling perspective, from an audience perspective as well. Try and do things that people haven't seen for a very long time or haven't seen at all. And I think, how do you prepare for something like that? You can't prepare for something that you haven't seen in a very long time or you've not seen at all. So that's kind of where I come from with that.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, very impressed with your in-ring style and your ability in the ring. And if you haven't seen much of Harry Singh, go out and check him out. There's plenty of footage of him on YouTube or on the various streaming platforms, but definitely worth a watch. But I want to talk a bit about your kind of your presentation and your character now, because it's very clear that you, in your presentation, that you pay homage and respect to your Punjabi heritage. You've been able to tie your heritage and your wrestling persona together into one awesome package for the fans. Tell us about how the presentation has evolved to what we have today then, Harry.
So I always kind of wanted something from my heritage involved in my persona, right? This is the thing, it's difficult to call it a persona because it's something where I thought, this is me, really, and I wanted to do certain things which haven't been done before. So if we're going to talk stereotypically, whenever you see, let's say, an Asian wrestler on TV, it's always Bollywood. And I did Bollywood for a few years because I was like, this is fun. Like, the crowd do love it as well. They love the dance, they love the music. So I understand why it was done so commonly, but no one's ever looked at the war side of things with India, and no one's ever looked at the war side of things with Punjab or anything like that. So I thought, this is an opportunity here to show that India is a lot more than just Bollywood, dancing, happy times, things like that, you know? There's a lot more history involved here. And I thought, let's try and bring it in. And for the most part, it's working right now. And there's a lot. There's layers upon layers of what I do in the ring, in my presentation and things like that, which all go back to my Indian heritage, which is the holy powder that I use in my entrance, the gear that I wear, certain things that I do as well. I've not had a chance to do a promo yet in this kind of gimmick, but there'll be words that I say, which is from that. Even my entrance as well. My entrance, for the most part, there's so much involved with the Indian heritage, Punjabi heritage, and I'm excited to kind of unwrap that a little bit more as time goes on, and just to give a bit more exposure to how cultured the Indian community is.
Oh, 100%. And you've got some new gear today as well. I've seen on your Instagram, you've got some new gear. So you'll be able to kind of, say, show that off at your next few wrestling shows, I'm sure. But I know that you've got a huge passion for traveling then, Harry. And like I say, anybody that's gone on your Instagram can tell that you're a keen traveler, probably more so pre-pandemic than more recently. But tell us about your traveling, especially when you're able to mix your passion for traveling with wrestling as well. You've probably seen some, probably been able to see and experience some wonderful places all over the world. But tell us about your passion for traveling, and sometimes when you can mix that with doing wrestling at the same time.
So I love traveling so much. There is a difference between traveling on holidays, in my opinion. Holidays, like, you're kind of on a beach relaxing. There's nothing wrong with that. I love doing that as well. But the kind of traveling aspect is experience the culture over there, you know. No matter how long you go for, you can experience some culture there, whether that's food, people, city-wise, wherever it is. There's something you can do there. And that was something I kind of got the itch for from a young age. Just being able to see different parts of the world, being able to talk to various people from different countries. And you learn so much about yourself as well. Like, a lot of people are scared to solo travel and things like that. And I do understand, because I was in that same boat. But I tend to find when you solo travel, you're more social towards other people and you're more willing to talk to other people. So it's not really so solo traveling. You're going on your own for sure, but you're going to meet so many people there and you experience so much and you learn so much about yourself as well. It's probably, if I wasn't a full-time wrestler, my second dream job would be a full-time traveler, if I could be that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, are there any countries that you haven't had the opportunity to go to yet that you'd love to, that are on the traveling bucket list?
So many. Southeast Asia is on my bucket list for sometime soon, I hope. Southeast Asia, Australia, South America. Oh, so many places. I literally I bought a map. You see it all the time on like ads and stuff where you can like scratch off the countries that you've been to.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been to so many places. This would be great. I was scratching them off and I was like, then I looked at the whole world and I was like, I've been to nowhere. I was like, I've literally seen nothing. So yeah, it's a reality check.
Absolutely, and like I say, it's kind of one of them things where you can never visit enough countries, can you? There's always somewhere else to visit. There's always somewhere else to visit. Tell us a bit about your podcast, because obviously you're on the Wrestling with John's podcast today, but you've got your own show, haven't you? Picking Brain podcast, I think it's called. You've had some fantastic guests from the UK wrestling scene: Doug Williams, Kanji, Johnny Kidd, NXT UK star Jack Stars, but. Tell us about your podcast. Was it something that you started during the pandemic? And tell us about some of the episodes and some of the guests that you've been lucky enough to have on your show.
It was really weird, actually. So I listened to a lot of podcasts in general, more so in the pandemic as well. But it was just something where I'm not very good at Twitter, like full transparency. I'm sure you can see it in my tweets. I'm not very good at using it and using things in short form. Which is why I much prefer Instagram, where I'm able to talk for a little bit longer. And a podcast was just part of that, really. I can't really, what's the word? I can't really express myself in so many characters, which is what Twitter has. You can only say so much in a tweet. And in a podcast, you're able to talk for a lot longer. So I really wanted to do something like that. And it kind of just came out of a conversation with my friends, to be honest, because I was like, kind of want to do this, and I did like a draft episode, so to speak. I was like, why not try it? And then at that point, I knew that there was people I could get on that people would want to hear, and I've got some of those people on, and there's more I'm sure I could do. But right now, I'm struggling in the confidence area a little bit, because I'm like, I don't know if this is any good or not. I don't know if people really want to hear this right now, and things like that. So I'm delaying the episode so I've recorded the 10th episode, which is the next one, but I've not had the courage to listen to it myself yet, because I don't know. This is the thing. This is the confidence. Like, I'm confident in the ring, and I'm confident in how I portray myself. But as far as a podcast goes, I want to do everything at a very good level, and I need to know that what I'm putting out is good. And I think that's where my confidence kind of comes into play. But this is a credit to you, because of how well you've put this together. I can see that you've got graphics on this page. You've got like a little banner behind you and things like that. That's a credit to how you've produced this. So yeah. Credit to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. But yeah, you got to release that 10th episode. You'll never know how good it is until you put it out there and get the feedback. But like I say, at the end of the day, it's kind of all good fun. It's all good fun and a great way to express yourself. But 2021, as we established, it's been a great year for you so far. So many accomplishments, so many great things achieved. But what would you say is your proudest moment in your pro wrestling career so far?
Very difficult question. There's a few things that come to mind. We kind of already spoke about some of them. Obviously, the match with Pete Dunne was like amazing to me. But I think if I was to talk about this when it's all said and done, I would, and let's say it was all said and done now, I would definitely say that I now have 2 matches on the WWE Network, and yeah, that's amazing to me, because it's something that everyone can kind of relate to, because everyone knows WWE, and even my family did. So, and my family, so my dad's like somewhat of a wrestling fan, but like my mom, my sister, my stepdad, they're not really wrestling fans at all. But when they saw that I was on the WWE Network, they knew. They were like, "Oh, that's big," you know. And that was like a proud moment for me, because they understood that I did this all on my own, you know. I wouldn't say all on my own. My dad helped so much, but effectively all on my own, you know. Because obviously I'm the only one wrestling, and I'm the one traveling and things like that, you know. But yeah, that was big.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking ahead to the next 6-12 months, nobody knows what the future holds. But are there certain things that you want to accomplish in the next year or two, maybe?
So much I want to do. I want to do Progress in front of a live crowd. I'd love to do Rev Pro at some point. I just want to be as busy as possible, to be honest. I want to wrestle the best in the country. I'm sure everyone does, but I know I want to prove to everybody that I can do this, you know. And I don't think I'll ever lose that kind of fire within me, because I've always got something to prove. And my main thing is to show that I can do this to everybody. So that's the main thing for me.
100%, 100%, and everything I've seen just points towards more success and more greatness. But Harry Singh, it's been awesome having you on the show, my friend. But before we let you go, an opportunity for you to throw out any of your socials: Facebook, Twitter,
Sure.
Instagram, which I know is your favorite. I know you've got a YouTube channel as well. But if you've got any merch you want to plug or any socials, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. So I'm Harry Singh Pro on Instagram. That's HARISINGH Pro. And then on Twitter, I'm Harry Singh 333. My Instagram's better. You can probably find me on Facebook under Harry Singh. Just drop me a message just to say that you watch this, because I've got so many requests and there's so many bots on Facebook that I don't want to accept. And YouTube, you can just type in Harry Singh and you'll find some matches and things like that on there.
That's awesome. But Harry Singh, it's been wonderful speaking to you for the last 55 minutes or so. I hope you've enjoyed speaking to me on this episode of Wrestling with Johners, and thank you very much.
So much fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, my friend.